Now the next lesson regarding consumer price index is how to construct a consumer price index or cost of living index. That is, what are the steps taken to construct consumer price index, CPI, consumer price index, or cost of living index, living index. Following steps are to be taken or involved. Following steps are involved. Following steps are involved in the construction of consumer price index. In the construction of consumer price index. Number first step is selection of consumer class. Very important step. Selection of consumer class. This step is foremost step and first step, that which consumers or which class of consumers are to be selected out of three or more than three classes whose consumer price index is to be constructed. So consumers are classified into various classes. We have already discussed about this matter, that consumers are classified into various classes, like we have industrial workers, we have government employees, for example, we have, for example, agricultural workers, etc. In addition to these three, we have so many, like teachers, we have non-urban non-manual employees, etc. But we have to select out of so many set of people, so many classes of people, we should select the class of, we should select only one class of people, only one class of consumers for which CPI is constructed, So this is the selection. It depends upon the assessor, estimator, or constructor who can select only one set of people, a particular class of people for which consumer price index is constructed. Number second is information about the family budget. Next step is we must have information about the family budget. We should have information about the family budgets. For example, if we have selected agriculture workers, we must know their income as well as expenditure, how much commodities they are consume, which type of commodities they are consuming, price of concerned goods which they are consuming, money spent on these goods and services. So after decision about the consumer class, after decision about consumer class, we must know, we should have information about their family budget, about their family budget. So we should know, we should know number A, the goods or services which they consume, the goods or services they consume, ये हमें पता होना चाहिए. Number second, B, quantities of consumption, the quantity of consumption they consume, quantity of consumption. Number C, we must know the price of the goods they consume, price of goods, both in base year and current year, both in base year and current year they consume, which they consume. D, we must know the amount of money they spend on these goods and services, amount of money, that is total expenditure on different goods, and how much expenditure they made on different set of goods, amount of money they spend on these goods, on these goods. The items which are generally consumed may be classified. So the items which we must have information, the items or goods they generally consume are food. B, we have clothing. Generally people, all set of people generally, if we take a particular class, they also consume these goods, food, clothing. We have fuel, so every consumer fuel they consume. Lighting, they use lighting, how much money they spend on lighting. House rent, they also spend on education, health, we have D, health, etc. So that is, we must have the second step involved is we must have full information about the family budget, what type of goods they are consuming, how much money they spend on these goods and services, what is the price of these goods in base year as well as in the current year, the quantity of goods and services they consume. We must have full information to construct a consumer price index. Number third step is very important. These all steps are important steps. The third one is choice of base year. As we know, base year is any year before the current year. The simple definition for base year is any year before the current year. The base year should be the year of economic stability. Base year should be any year. Base year should be any year. Base year should be any year in which there was economic stability. It is very important. It must be a normal year economically, a normal year. It should not be too distant from the current year. It should not be too far from the current year. It should not be too far or distant from the current year. It should not be too far from the current year. So we must have full choice, a good choice about the base, which year we should take as base year. Number fourth is information about prices. We have already discussed it. Information about prices of goods or services which the consumers purchase. That is, the retail price of selected goods or commodities should be collected. The retail price, because this is consumer price index. The retail price of selected goods or commodities should be collected from the region where this selected group lives, where this selected group of consumers live उस एरिया से and make purchases उस एरिया में prices कितने थे in the base year as well as in the current year. So we must have information about the prices of goods the selected group of consumers purchase. We must have full information about the prices both in the current year and base year. Number fifth step is weightage. किस चीज को कितनी weightage दी जाएगी? So weightage depends generally upon the expenditure made on the good. कितना हम expenditure उस पे करते हैं from our income. Whether our 30% income or 20% income or 5% income is spent on this group. The importance of various items for different classes of people is different. Therefore, the selected items should be given weights according to their relative importance. The selected goods or services should be given weights. Weights according to their relative importance. According to their relative importance. As discussed earlier, there are two ways of giving weights. There are two ways of giving weights. किस तरह हम weight देते हैं? हमारे पास दो चीजें हैं, quantity weights and expenditure weights. First is quantity weights and second is expenditure weights. Expenditure. What is quantity weight? Quantity weight is how much quantity the consumers purchase from a particular set of goods. Next is how much expenditure is made from our given income. जो मैं पहले ही डिस्कस कर चुका हूं, whether we or this particular consumers, this particular class of consumers, whether they spend 20% or 10% or 5% or 15% of their income on this particular good. What is this quantity weight? Quantity weight हम अलग से डिस्कस करेंगे और वो expenditure weight हम अलग से डिस्कस करेंगे. Quantity weight, these weights are given according to quantities consumed in the base period. the weights are given under this method. The weights are given according to the quantities consumed or consumed in the base year. बेस ईयर में कितनी क्वांटिटी इस चीज की परचेज हो गई. अगर फूड के फॉर एग्जांपल 1 क्विंटल, वीट का 50 केजी दो, सो इसका वेट अगर 2 दे देंगे, इसका वेट 1 दे देंगे, तो अकॉर्डिंगली ये वेट है कि कितनी हमने क्वांटिटी इसकी परचेज की है. जिस चीज की ज्यादा क्वांटिटी परचेज और कंज्यूम हो गई उसकी ज्यादा वेट आएगी, जिसकी कम परचेजेस हो गई, कम कंजप्शन हो गई, उसकी कम वेट आएगी. एक्सपेंडिचर वेट. नेक्स्ट मेथड फॉर गिविंग वेट्स, एक्सपेंडिचर वेट्स. Expenditure weight is the weights according to this method. The weights are given according to the total expenditure on this item consumed in the base year. The weights are given according to the expenditure, according to the total expenditure made on the goods consumed. On the goods or good consumed. On the good purchased and consumed in the base year. बेस ईयर में इस चीज पर कितना एक्सपेंडिचर हुआ है. अगर मेरे पास 1000 रुपया आमदनी था, 1000 रुपया, if I have 1000 income, out of this 1000 income on food for example I spent 100 rupees, it means I have spent 10%, so 10 इसकी वेट आएगी. इसी तरह एजुकेशन पे 500 रुपीज, तो 5 इसकी 5% वेट आएगी इसकी. इसी तरह हेल्थ पे फॉर एग्जांपल 100 इसका 10% वेट आएगा. सो अकॉर्डिंगली वेट इज गिवन अकॉर्डिंग टू द एक्सपेंडिचर मेड ऑन दिस particular good or service, but expenditure made in the base year. So this is all about the steps involved, the ways we have to evaluate for construction of price index, this consumer price index or cost of living index. The first is selection of consumer class. किस consumer class के लिए हम बनाएंगे. Information about their family budget. अगर हमने selection की है किस क्लास के लिए बनाना है तो उनका फैमिली बजट हमें जानना है. चॉइस ऑफ द बेस ईयर नॉर्मल ईयर, a year in which there was economic stability. Information about the prices both in the base year and current year for the commodity selected. Weightage given to the goods, weight according to quantity weights or weight according to the expenditure weights. We have two ways. So this is all about the steps involved in the construction of consumer price index. Thank you very much.